Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Thursday, November 15, 2018. Our first item, we have a request from the Conservation Commission to consider the creation of a trail from the Zinc Northwoods Trailhead across the municipal parcel on Corn Road. And Rebecca Longval, our conservation agent, is here to walk us through the plan.
Sure. How are you this evening?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful.
So what I have is basically the same copy I believe we provided to you as well. We are quite literally looking to come out of our existing trailhead, which is marked here because I realized it wasn't on the one that I had sent to you. This dotted line is the estimated proposed trail. If you look on the opposite side, we have the resource area shown. That's still this parcel. That's the same one we're looking at. So there is some riverfront area. We'd be staying as far outside of that to just be mindful of wetland jurisdiction, but there's not any tree cutting, and if there were, it'd be small saplings in terms of what's being removed. But realistically, there's not much to be moved except for brush and just creating a trail through to create less road walking to Trailhead 2 of Rattlesnake, which is just across the bridge over 495, and then increase off-road portions of Throw Walk, which goes from Concord to Wachusett.
Sounds fine to me.
So where this trailhead would start on Corn Road, that's where another trail ends? I see, okay.
So we have a easement to go across private property currently that
excellent.
exists.
Yeah.
Great.
Excellent. I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a great idea.
All right, then I'll make a motion to approve the Conservation Commission's request for the creation of a trail from Zinc Northwoods Trailhead across the municipal parcel on Corn Road.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Have a
Rebecca.
nice night.
And next, we have a discussion regarding the status of roads at Century Mill Estates with Planning Board
Wait a minute.
Chairman Eric Nyland. Did I miss something?
The review of those financial priorities.
Oh, we have something bigger to work on.
They're all here. Are they
ready?
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
I could quickly do my update while we're waiting for them to come down.
Okay.
Because I don't have a lot tonight. Minuteman project is progressing. The next building committee meeting is next Monday night. I won't be attending it because I'll be attending 2 meetings here, but I'll be able to get an update out of that. So I'll have something for our December 5th meeting. The update on the portico project, they have done is they've done a couple of checks up here with the lift to look at some things. Submitted their first submittal for payment, and we've got a couple of questions on the bill on the invoice and procedurally how we want to go forward handling some things. So once we get that sorted out, things will start to roll after that. But it's important to get the first submittal down so we're all on the same page about what we're accepting for expenses and what we're not. So I'm not seeing any issues there yet, just a slightly slower rollout than I thought we would be having. I actually do have a public service announcement for later, but I'll wait until later to do that. So that's, and I do expect at our next selectmen's meeting that Joe Lynch will be in and will be making recommendations on some procedural changes up at the transfer station up at the landfill to deal with some of the things that we've been talking about.
Good. Excellent. So just revise, so next up, we're going to review the proposed financial policies from the advisory committee. And they are all, many of them are in the room.
So I don't know if you needed a brief introduction or if you just had questions you wanted to ask or how you wanted to handle the discussion.
I guess maybe for just people at home, background on this document. I'm not familiar with it, so just, are you updating it or is this a big kind of revamp of
So maybe a little background of why we.
Yeah, so brief background, about a year and a half ago, the advisory committee, after a discussion with the Board of Selectmen, started putting together a financial policies manual because we didn't really have like an official place where all of the policies were combined in one place. And some policies we didn't really have in written form, so we wanted to do that. And the draft that you have before you is like 42 pages long, and it's sort of represents the efforts of advisory committee with input from the town treasurer, town accountant, and obviously the town administrator. I know that the capital planning policy's already been approved because you guys looked at that last February. And we also chatted with, we ran the assessing policies, the overlay policy past the Board of Assessors. And we spoke with Donna Madden before she retired, so she had a lot of input here as well. But really the idea was just to put it all into one place so we could have it. It would be a living document because there are some specific thresholds that we've included in the policies that they just represent our best effort, what we think is a good benchmark to have. But if we find for whatever reason that it's unworkable, I think the policies give us the flexibility to go back and revise them. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about the auditors.
Yeah, well, we were written up in our management letter for not having financial policies. So I think it's a great way to, it kind of pushed us into a place that we should be anyway. So it's just kind of tightening that up.
So Melanson
Yep.
did that last year.
Yeah. And I told them ours would be forthcoming this year, and they were very happy.
And we'd actually started working on it before that.
Yes. It just wasn't, like Brian said, kind of wrapped up neat in a bow.
That's right.
It was just kind of there, but in different pieces.
Great.
I just had two comments for the moment. One is in the introduction. Your first bullet is sustain a consistent level of service and value for residents. I think what we need to be mindful of is the budget message that Don puts out every year is level funded, which doesn't necessarily mean level service. So I think, maybe just kind of tweaking that a bit, trying to preserve consistent level of service within the confines of a level funded budget, or finding some other creative ways to achieve that. Because, the cost of service may go up and we may not necessarily have the money to do that.
Yeah.
So just, The other thing, and I talked about it before, is, and it's certainly not for protracted conversation tonight, is I think we really need to look at how the capital planning committee is looking at stuff. Because you have here that I think there's a threshold of $10,000 that the capital planning committee takes a look at. And I think you've got categories of spending. You have more of the operational budget kind of stuff where, Joe Lynch needs a plow, or he needs a sander, or he needs a truck, or he needs something, which, if he doesn't get it, we're not gonna be able to deliver service. And it's more tied to the operational budget, and it's more of a decision they need between Joe, or DPW, and Don, and the selectmen weigh in, obviously you guys. And then there are capital projects like the portico, or we have to buy a $600,000 fire truck or something like that, which I are more exceptions rather than the rule, and they don't necessarily fall in. And I think the capital planning committee needs to look at all those capital requests in totality, but I think their charter really should be having a purview of everything that needs to be purchased, which are more the operational things, but also looking at the exceptions to the rule, the fire trucks, the culverts, whatever. And, kind of managing and juggling all of that with what we are going to need to spend on a year-to-year basis versus these, exceptional kind of things. Because I'm really not sure that the capital planning committee should be providing detailed opinion as to whether Joe really needs a sander or not. I think it really should be more up to Joe, Don, and us guys, as opposed to capital planning. But they need to be aware that Joe needs a sander, but not necessarily have the same level of weight to say no versus yes versus a fire truck. and that's all, from that perspective.
Yeah.
It's more shades of gray and nuances than anything else.
That makes sense.
I actually did have a couple of notes, and I couldn't even guess how many times I read this, and, we've had several dialogues, but then I read it from start to finish again today, and just a couple of things jumped out at me. And one was, it's tied to the first thing Stan said. If you look at page 13, under expenditure guidelines, we have the definition of what maintenance is, level service, or versus level funded. Yet, at the bottom of the page, we say additionally, the town's forecast models should assume that current service levels will be maintained, yet above we're saying we would assume level funded, not level service, so that seemed like a bit of a disconnect.
Yeah.
Maybe the forecast model should assume level funding, if that's the approach that we're going to take.
I will just say, it gets tricky with the forecast model because part of what would be included in the forecast is labor costs, so I think we would be,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We would automatically be increasing those to a certain extent in order to support service levels, so I don't know but I get your point, I think we should take a look
And
at
that's a
that.
very fair point, because earlier on, before the budget message went out, Brian and I talked about, we're gonna say level funding, as we always do, but it's level funding X wages.
Right.
So that's a really good point. And the other comment I had on page 30, when we're talking about media issues, we've got a sentence that says, if the town administrator is contacted by the media regarding an alleged fraud or audit investigation, I can't stress enough, that's not going on right now, but they will consult the Board of Selectmen before responding to a media request. That may not work well, because if I'm gonna get direction from the board on how to respond to the media, that really assumes a 48-hour notice for a public meeting and then a discussion at the board level. What we might want to say is that the town administrator will consult with the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Because I can do that, with a phone call. And then the chair and I would agree on what the message is that should be given to the media, and then I would do that. That would allow us to be a lot more nimble than the way it's worded here.
Okay.
Sounds good.
That's all I have. I think it's very well written.
It's a monumental document.
That's great.
I would join with Stan in saying I think we need to relook at how we do the capital planning. There's a bunch of things I have questions about in here, but where I really want to put my attention now is on the topic of free cash and how it's selected, because you seem to be relying on the state guidelines for doing that. And as I read the state guidelines, they do state how much free cash a town should have, but when you go and you read the section of the state guidelines on stabilization funds, in the state guidelines, the stabilization funds are used to buy a large, or to pay for a capital project without borrowing. So in the parlance of the state documents, the stabilization fund, if you want to buy a fire truck and it's $600,000, you create a stabilization fund and you put $50,000 in it every year until you get your $300,000 to buy a fire truck. There's no mention in there about using stabilization the way we use it. So I think that the state recommendation for how much free cash a town should be carrying assumes there's no stabilization fund used like we use ours, which is just as a financial buffer against uncertainty. So I'm not comfortable using those guidelines to determine what the free cash target would be. And I personally think $350,000 is way too high.
So just so that I understand, you're saying that because the state guidelines suggest that they're not using stabilization funds in a general stabilization the way we do. They have specific stabilization funds for specific capital projects, that those guidelines are not appropriate because we basically use our stabilization fund as a general buffer rather than specifically to fund capital purchases.
Yes.
No, I think you're both wrong. We use stabilization for emergencies.
Right.
If we're planning on buying a fire truck, we don't use stabilization.
No, I'm not, neither one of us is
And
saying
I
that.
think you had a definition of, you know, setting aside, creating quote unquote a stabilization fund to buy a fire truck and setting aside 50 grand a year.
Stan, that's what's in the state recommendations. That's how they define, that's what they say a stabilization fund is for. That we use a stabilization fund for another purpose is not a problem.
You can use a stabilization fund for any lawful purpose.
Right.
So it's not, you can have multiple stabilization funds for capital, you know, like you said, a fire truck, but you can also have it for any so emergencies or,
Right.
you know, they're.
We could set up a separate account and decide to put 50 grand aside to buy a fire truck and put $50,000 a year. We don't necessarily call it a stabilization fund, we call it, you know.
Like our wastewater treatment
Right, exactly.
stabilization.
Yeah.
Okay, but my point is that the state recommendation on how much free cash a town should have assumes that there's no others, that stabilization funds are not being used for that purpose. That's the point I want everyone to walk away with.
Right, that's a fair point. I just would want to point out, though, that our $350,000 balance, that target balance in footnote 3, is well under what the state recommendation is. That's what we've been adhering to. And we talked about this, like, the state says, I believe it's like 3 to 5%. $350,000 is below that. But we're okay with it because we do have a healthy rainy day fund. So I don't think it's a fair characterization that we're over saving money, but I think that the discussion that we had is that we might not want to be too aggressively trying to build our free cash balances each year because we might not need them to be as high as we've thought in the past.
And we haven't. I mean,
Right.
we used to have much larger
Right.
dollar values in free cash.
I think you need free cash for use as working capital during the year. But I don't know how the town would go about determining how much working capital it needs. When I was on advisory, I was told the town can't figure that out, which I find very hard to believe then, and I find it hard to believe now. But to me, that's what you need free cash for. Or that's what the free cash target should be, is to make sure you have the working capital to get through the year. My guess is that $350,000 is a lot more than what we need in terms of working capital, but, let the advisory committee decide that.
We may revise downward in the future, but I don't think we were comfortable revising downward at this point until there's enough historical evidence to suggest that we'd be safe doing so.
Okay, the other question I had was, I didn't mark it up. It had to do with, you made some historical statement, you made some, oh, here it is. This is in the debt management area, where you make statements like general fund debt service will be no more than 10% of general fund expenditures, and the town will attempt long-term debt schedule at least 50% of outstanding municipal payment in 10 years. I was wondering if you could, I know you can't provide it tonight, but it would help understand that better if we knew what the history was and what the town percentage was in, over the past 5-10 years or something like that. I don't know if that's available. Maybe you already have that, but in terms of saying, is that the right level, it'd be helpful to look at what the historical trend has been.
Yeah, I I don't have it sitting here, I might have it.
No, I know you don't have it set and ready for this. But other than that, I think it's an astounding document. There's a couple other things I would question, but I can do that through email. I don't think we'd be violating any rules if I inquired about it. Would that be correct, Don?
No, you're free to ask questions, offer an opinion. It's not
Outside of the
deliberation.
meeting, okay.
It's not deliberation, no.
I do have a question though, in terms of moving forward, when would it make sense for this set to be approved? And then, obviously, we'll be able to continue to revise it from day one, but like, when do you think we should have them approved as like our current?
I think it should be approved prior to advisory jumping into the budget. So
Before,
if not tonight, then in December, it should be approved.
okay.
And then this be the working document for the year. For the
And also our
FY20.
audit is wrapping up, so
Mhm.
if we do approve it sooner than later, we won't get written up again.
Yeah.
When are they wrapping up?
Next month.
So our next meeting is December 6th, I believe it is. So
Well, are you still tweaking it,
Well,
or?
what I was gonna say is, if it works with your timeline, if people wanted to send me changes that they wanted in this version before December 6th, I could send the red line by then with those changes, and then anything else we can just add after the fact, or talk about after the fact.
Yeah, I'm happy with talking about it and then, revising it next year if that's appropriate.
Yep.
So if everyone else is comfortable with that, I'll move that we approve the financial policies as presented tonight by the advisory committee.
Subject to the few changes we've talked about this evening.
Subject to the few changes we talked about this evening.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Thank you for your
Thanks,
work.
guys. Great work.
Thank you.
A lot of
Thank you.
great work.
Clear. Now, we have a discussion regarding the status of roads at Century Mill Estates with the planning board.
Hey guys, how are you?
Where do you want to start? Clearly not happening this year.
Well, I guess that was the question. I mean, is he gonna get the punch list done and top coat on? and-
No.
Okay, well, then,
But it's good to talk about.
Where are they? What is the progress report?
What's changed since the summer, when we all sat down and discussed this last time? Anything changed?
At this point, they haven't done any of the work that they need to do for partial road acceptance, so they're no further along.
Than they were during the summer?
Well, the biggest change during the summer was the plan was to go into phase 3. They couldn't secure land in phase 3 to do the turnaround.
Yeah. So, so what we talked about over the past couple months was to, instead of going to the end of Mill Pond, go up Cider Circle. But that was, always assuming that phase 3 was gonna happen. What we talked about last night was potentially changing the plans to have a circle at the end of phase 2. Because I know we talked about not leaving the last 300 feet of Mill Pond Road unfinished. And actually, one of the residents who lives on that section would be, very against leaving his portion of the development, undone.
oh, that's the conversation you and I had.
Yeah. So what we talked about last night is potentially changing the plans to just add a circle at the end of Mill Pond Road, kind of, we were always assuming, phase 3 will get done and phase 1 will get done, but maybe look at it the other way, saying, potentially one will get done. Just put a circle at the end of Mill Pond Road, and if we have to open it up when phase 3 ever gets done, then fine, but.
So, like, in this climate where houses are popping up everywhere, why are things stalled out on phase 3 at Century Mill?
So phase 3 was sold off to some different investors,
Okay.
and there's a little difference in interpretation of who's paying for what parts of the improvements that need to go in there. So from the developer's perspective, the lot owners are supposed to be paying for the roads, and from some of the lot owners, they say, no, we're not. So that's kind of the disconnect there.
So the lot owners are the investors who bought it?
Yes.
Yeah,
And that sold off most of phase 3.
All of these.
Or all phase 3, and phase, he still owns phase 1, but it's up for sale, yeah.
So I don't know if you all know that.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
So it's on MLS, it's asking, I think, 1.8 million for the 14 lots in phase 1. So potentially that could be sold off too. So phase 3 and 1 are very much in flux. So that's why we were talking last night, maybe just in the plan, adding a circle at the end of phase 2. And I know that we've talked about, what do we do with the rest of the development?
But the phase 2 plan would require the landowners
Yeah, for
phase
sure.
2 to agree to easements.
Deed
they have to-
that land to the town.
Yeah.
And how much money are we holding of Andy's?
The
suit?
cash bond?
Yeah,
254,000.
okay, so we do have that.
And that's not including the phase 3 crossing?
The only thing that's being held for, so conservation is holding a sum of money for the wetland crossing in phase 3.
Which is separate from the 254.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this leaves the people who live there without mail service, without school buses going up and down the street?
School buses do go up and down, I think.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
They're not supposed to.
Well, it's up to the school bus company. I mean, it's rare that the school bus company will agree to do that.
Yeah.
Many times they don't.
The big cost for the residents is that they have to plow all the roads themselves, and so they're in an HOA, I guess with Andy and the paint him to do it.
What do we mean, HOA?
Homeowners Association.
Okay.
Yeah,
And what recourse do they have to get their road paved?
There's lawsuits, I think.
yeah. I mean, if he walked away, we'd have the 250,000, and if that didn't cover it, so I started writing down a list of everything. So there's binder that needs to be fixed, there's a lot of berms that need to be done, there's ADA driveway compliance that needs to be done, there's shade trees that need to be put in.
The driveway stuff might be done,
The binder fixing, I don't think so.
the ADA stuff.
Oh, well, instead of just having to work on it, I don't know. There's still a lot of things to be done, but so if that 250 couldn't cover it, then it would really be the residents that if they wanted their road to be completed, it would be up to them.
Erica, what is the process of accessing that money?
Well,
No.
I mean, he hasn't walked away yet.
Okay, so he has to walk away.
Yeah. I mean, the plan is still, last time we talked to him, to do the work in spring if need be.
His plan right now is to pick up and do everything next spring and summer, and then, so it's a year, or,
I'm sorry, but I think it's really important for people to understand that there is no way that these roads are in a condition where they can be accepted at next year's annual town meeting.
That's very true.
Hear me out, because I'm not saying it for your benefit, but I'm saying it for people watching the meeting.
Okay.
There is no way that these roads are going to be in a condition where they can be accepted at next year's annual town meeting, which means the annual town meeting of May 2020 at the earliest. And it is through no result of anything that the town has done or hasn't done that that's the case. The responsibility rests completely on the developer. The town has been trying to work diligently with the developer to try to get to a point where the roads could be accepted at the May 19 annual town meeting, and that just hasn't happened.
My recollection was we made a motion during the summer to put an article on the warrant. Do we have to rescind that
No,
motion?
that was not the motion. The motion was, and the agreement was, the selectmen would sponsor an article on the warrant if the road work was done and the punch list items in the spring were done to our satisfaction.
For a partial acceptance of the roads
For a partial
that were
acceptance.
done in
That's
phase
right.
2 and phase 3.
But that hasn't happened, so there is no,
There is nothing we have to rescind?
no, there is not.
The other hangup that I see coming is just their financial situation. What they told, the latest they told us in the meeting is that they can't top coat unless he gets the bond, which I'm not comfortable giving away any bond, so.
I think at this point, we shouldn't give him
Yeah,
any money.
yeah.
He either needs, he can secure some type of loan against
Mhm.
phase one, collateral loan against that property.
I agree.
We should not be giving him a dime of bond money.
I think we asked him if he had the resources to get this done during the summer, and he said yes.
That's not what he told us.
No, but it was a matter of
Well,
of
and
coming
it
to
was-
agreement with phase three, the phase three owners. That was the hangup.
I don't follow you.
He needed to get their buy-in, to have property and pay for the turnaround in phase three.
Yeah.
That was the entire plan that we presented to you in the summer, and that we were working with them on, was contingent upon that he
Okay.
would secure those rights from the phase three owners.
No, but still to pay for the overall project, I think he was still assuming that he, for some reason, get bond released before, right? I don't know. Has anything changed? You talked to Fred more recent than us.
No, nothing's changed.
They still want that money before they pay?
That's based on the last meeting where
Yeah.
Mr. Vidency came in and talked about it.
Is Fred Kuhn still employed there?
He is,
Okay.
he's building the
That's
houses, yeah.
Could I add some commentary? And I see some of my other neighbors from development.
Sure. Can you identify yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Kai Chuang. I'm a resident on 71 Mill Pond Road.
Mhm.
And my home and Chris's were one of the ones that are at the end of Mill Pond Road. I think we were one of the first residents move into that development. We've been here for 5 years. And I think, from my point of view, it's of utmost importance that Andy finishes the roads for phase 1 and 2. From my point of view, I'm sorry, for phases 2 and 4. From my point of view, I don't assume that he's going to finish phases 1 and 3. And I think now we probably have some 30, 40 homes in that.
It's over 50.
Over 50, and we're all stuck with roads that are half finished. So I think there are several issues that myself and I think my neighbors would ask for your help to help resolve. One is just getting the roads finished. Anywhere that is in phases 2 and 4, Andy should finish that road. And whatever incentive or leverage you have, I would strongly advocate that you exercise that to ensure he finishes. I think there's a separate but related issue about would the town accept the roads, to finish the roads, all the way through Mill Pond Road or only through Cider Circle? And I know for myself, I have not been consulted by Andy or anybody else, working with Andy, about, gee, we may not be able to get your part of the roads accepted. What are some of the options that we can talk through? And I'm perfectly happy to work with Andy and the town to find something that is acceptable to everybody. But I just feel like I have not been a part of any of the process. And so for me, I only found out last night that the town may not accept our portion of the road, which certainly creates problems for plowing, for a school bus, for all sorts of stuff, for mail delivery. And so I have two asks, I guess. One is, I think we need to make Andy finish all the roads, the the construction of the roads. And there's a related, but separate issue of acceptance, either all of Mill Pond Road or part of it. And I'm open to working with, Andy and the town to find something that works everybody, but he needs to finish the road. Because I worry that if he doesn't do it now, the chances that he may never do it, and then all of us will be on the hook, as you just stated, to be responsible for finishing that out, and we definitely did not sign up for that.
Right, well, no, I've had separate communications with Eric Nyland, and I've told him when this partial road acceptance, and then the circle, the turnaround, and now all of a sudden, they needed permission from the phase 3 owners, which obviously has happened. I mean, I told Eric, my opinion is that Andy needs to finish all of the road in phases 2 and 4. There should not be 300 feet of road that he doesn't finish. I mean, he was the one who cut the deal with the other 3 landowners when he sold off phase 3. So he knew exactly what he was getting himself involved in. And he has the obligation to finish phases 2 and 4. Not this, I'm gonna do all of phases 2 and 4 with the exception of 300 feet. So my point is he needs to do all of it. There should be nothing left that's not finished to the point where the town of Bolton can evaluate whether or not to, put that road on the warrant for acceptance. It needs to be all done. So that's at least my view and position. You can talk to my 2 colleagues, but that's my view on that.
Yeah, the reason why I was kind of in a weird situation is because we were always working under the assumption that we want that Mill Pond Road to be in its final state, which would be no turnaround, just heading straight into phase 3, So we wanted it to be as it would be accepted by the town, but without the turnaround in phase 3 or somewhere, we thought there was a hang-up. But as I was saying, I think a better approach, seeing that 3 and 1 are probably 5+ years, I don't know how long they're off, but it's a ways off, that we asked them to redo the plans and put a circle at the end of Mill Pond Road.
Well, I know, that was mainly at the request of the fire department.
Yeah, right. But of course, it would take Kai and, I don't know, his neighbors, they would have to.
This is one of the. Do you mind if I speak real quick?
Yeah, if you could raise your hand. Yes, sir.
Chris
Identify yourself.
Horsey, 72 Mill Pond Road, live across the street from Kai. And listening to everything you guys have going on here, the request of the fire department to put the cul-de-sac at the end of Mill Pond Road where we live, is that a planning board requirement as part of your rules for subdivisions, or is that a request from the fire department? Because right now, the trash trucks come down and turn around, school bus turns around, delivery trucks. I mean, are we asking too much of the developer here?
Well, you do have, there is kind of like.
There's a half of a turnaround
Yeah.
because the other half was in my front yard.
Yeah.
So they removed that.
So we do have subdivision rules and regs that say, diameter-wise, what the
Right.
turnaround needs to be. But, regardless, whatever it is, I think your land, or somebody's land, is partly on that turnaround. So what would need to happen is you'd have to give that land to the town so we could make an official town-owned turnaround where we own it and we control it.
So I think to answer your question, the planning board requires it as part of our regulation, and the fire department requires it when they sign off on a subdivision.
Right, because
So
we don't have a straight-through drive
So
all the
they
way
can
through
turn
now.
their trucks around
So
in
they can turn around.
an expedient fashion.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
The reason I brought it up.
The garbage truck can pull in and then back out, or
They actually turn around right
20-foot
now.
turn or whatever it is.
The way the road is, they are able to turn around.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're turning around on somebody's land.
Mine, and
Yeah.
then my
It
next door
can't,
neighbor.
yeah, it can't stay
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
We're not gonna, do a town road on
Right.
somebody's land, we gotta own the land, I think, right?
Well, as watching this unfold, I've been there 4 years. And watching it unfold, it's just been one failed date after another. Broken promises, I've watched this kind of evolve, and I agree with everybody. I think financially, I don't know if he's ever gonna finish. And it's gonna leave everyone with a sour taste in their mouth if everybody doesn't do whatever they can to kind of, push them in the right direction. And is there a better solution
I mean,
to this situation? I mean, has anybody thought about approaching the landowners that are pushing back and saying, we'll grant you can you give us a temporary easement to take this land?
That's what-
until-
yeah.
So the problem,
Yeah.
Is that something that he has to do or you have to do?
at one of our meetings, they were all at this meeting, but it can't be a temporary easement because we have to assume, as everybody is, that phase 3 will never be completed. So that cul-de-sac is, we have to assume is going to be permanent. It's going to be built as a permanent cul-de-sac. It's and it has to be deeded as such. If phase 3 was completed and the road was changed, we'd look at how to give that land back to those lots. We kind of cut the cul-de-sac back and move straight through, but but it's a permanent easement, so, and the bigger I think they were okay, I think, with the easement, but they didn't want to pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So it's, so Andy is saying, well, I sold you unimproved lots, and so you have to pay for the road.
Yeah.
They're saying that wasn't part of what the agreement was, and so now they're,
But in the
to
meantime.
finish the phase 3, it's probably going to go to land court and have a judge
Right.
decide, so I think that 5 years is probably optimistic.
But the 50 of us that all live in the development we're gonna start to suffer pretty soon. This is
Can I ask,
tough spot.
I remember going back, I watched back in April, because Andy was in here with you guys and whatnot. So what's the excuse from April to now that he basically hasn't done any of the work that he said he was gonna do? So I guess,
For a while, it's always an excuse. For a while, the excuse was that, well, if I go and do this and I get it ready for acceptance, what if the selectmen don't put it on the warrant?
He wanted the guarantee.
You wanted to guarantee
That's
that
why
you
we
would
came
came,
to
so
that.
that's why we came to you. So we did that.
well, we did that a long time ago.
Right.
And then there was
There's
a
always-
hang-up where he hadn't given the check to us for engineering.
There's always an
that's,
With their concerns, it's valid. He doesn't do what he says, of course.
Sir, in the back, you did something on
Yeah, John Ballots, 21 Cider Circle. I live in the development on one of the dead ends. I was just going to comment on what these guys were saying. So the Whiteman brothers were actually at our HO meeting last night. That's the lot owners that are in contention with Andy there in a lawsuit about it. So clearly it's financial, and it's the argument of who owns the cost of paving the road, right? So you have however many feet that is to extend it. I thought they were just arguing they didn't want to pay for the extra portion, the circle that's going to be broken out. I was offering that maybe the homeowners would fund that to make it happen. But it's really paying for any of the road, any of the improvements. So the numbers, maybe $100,000. I don't know the numbers, but I think Fred said maybe $50,000, $100,000. So I don't think that's something the homeowners can fund to make happen. I don't know what we can do to make happen, and I don't think the lot owners are going to budge on that. They own 10 lots. And they're not going to move on their lawsuit or whatever they did in a battle with Andy, so we're stuck. So I think to Chris and Kai's point, obviously they don't want their portion not to be part of the town roads if we get it paved and finished. So if there is a solution to put a circle there, that's great. If there's not, I don't know how much they'd be willing to give up in land and how that would work. I still think part is better than none. And obviously wanting the whole portion is my desire. But if you can get 90% of it and the homeowners only have to pay to plow 300 feet, it's better than nothing, in my opinion. I would rather everything if we can come to an agreement and get Andy to do it, but I'd rather have a lesser favorable option than none.
Right, but it's just not the paving. If the work, if the road isn't complete to
All the work
as-built
to be
specs,
right.
then any failure of the road or any of the structures, that's not going to be the town's responsibility because we haven't accepted it. So for you guys, it's even worse because it's just not plowing. It's if something fails, if the drainage structures fail,
Right.
then you're talking serious money. That's why I'm insisting that everything get done.
Right.
Can we go back and ask the fire department or forget about putting the circle in?
And we can talk to them about that and see if they would, in this case, be amenable to that. But, we haven't had that conversation yet.
Well,
I can't make that decision here. And obviously there's
Being
houses
new
next door.
to the selectmen, I got introduced to this in April. But I thought in April, we had agreement as to what was going to get done and when it was going to get done. So I don't know that trying to make new agreements is going to be any more fruitful. And the town, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, really has very little leverage over him, except for the bond that we hold.
It's the only leverage we have.
We're told COs, but pretty much everybody lives there, so.
My personal opinion on the bond is, we may need to use it, so we shouldn't be releasing it to him.
Yeah.
So, well, of course, we won't. What's the process to taking the bond? I know we were talking about that in another.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would want town council to weigh in on that. because I've-
Town council would guide us through that.
Yeah.
There is a process, and we would work with them to follow.
Because if it's more than the bond, then we're stuck with it, right?
Yeah, because I don't know, Don, if we have to rescind our decisions. I don't know what the big picture is on
Right.
being able to just take that money, so.
I've never had to do it
I
as far as
haven't
a housing development. I mean, I've had to do it on building projects. I've never had to do it on housing development, and we would need very specific guidance from
I
council.
agree.
I mean, what I said last night was, I mean, there's, not that there isn't a sense of urgency, but at this point, 2020 town meeting is the earliest that this could come up, so we have all of this coming year to figure out.
Well,
what to
yeah,
do.
from that perspective, but they don't want to drive on those roads until all that time, so.
Well, I mean, at this point, paving season is over.
I understand
Yeah,
that, so, but there's a difference between doing it in the spring and doing it a year from now,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
And obviously, if I lived there, I'd want it done, to be done in the spring.
Yes.
He gets to choose who speaks, not me.
Yeah, I just have a question about your homeowners association payments and what leverage you have with that.
Who wants to go on that?
Speak to that if you want.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, we don't have any leverage. He charged us, so the HOA document as was written is very protective of Andy. And almost any lawyer that looked at it says the same thing. It's not the normal HOA. He had advisement him on changes, but he was unwilling to make any changes at the time that we purchased. I assume everybody else had the same approach where we couldn't get any modifications to the HOA itself. So we're stuck with it as it's written. And as it's written, he can charge us whatever he deems appropriate. He's supposed to be able to show us the evidence once a year, but he also can charge a fee every month if it's unpaid. So, for instance, he hadn't charged anybody up through last year, so he back charged the previous 5 years. And there's no evidence on what his costs were for plowing or landscaping. So there's no evidence to say his numbers are accurate or not accurate. We can argue it, we can do a lawsuit, that's our only leverage, but I think the majority of us are seeing his exit as hopefully imminent, and we can take over the HOA when we get to 75% occupancy, which is supposed to be 54 houses.
I think we could take the HOA now if we really wanted to. It's based on lot sale, sold,
So,
not occupancy. And if I don't know if we're at that point, but if we are, we go to the people he's in litigation with in phase 3, and I'm pretty sure they would rather side with us than side with Andy. But I agree with John, it's an entirely non-functioning HOA, it's an HOA in name only.
Is
And
this, when you say percentage of lots sold,
Yeah.
is that based upon the entire development?
Yes,
Well, I think you have a strong case because
no.
I haven't seen the document, but basically Andy sold off.
that's right, he sold off.
He sold off
almost everything.
over phase 3,
Yeah.
and now phase 1's for sale. So in my mind, your subdivision is no longer the subdivision that was approved by the planning board. It's an entirely different beast now. And you know, I've also recommended to the planning board that they either amend some bylaws or rules or regs so that what Andy did years ago would not necessarily be allowed, and to prevent something like this happening again. But I think you have a case that the subdivision that Andy got approved by the planning board is not what we have now. And you know, if you can get a hold of whatever agreements or documents that Andy has with the other 3 landowners, I think you have a case that, you know, your percentages go way up, and especially now that he's selling basically phase 1, which is at least a quarter of the subdivision. I think you have a strong case that your whatever the percentages are in the HOA that, you know, where you can take over. I think, you know, you have a much better chance of that. I mean, I was kind of surprised. I've never really heard of, you know, an unfinished development subdivision where there's a homeowners association that the builder is charging, in my mind, you know, the builder's responsible for landscaping, the builder's responsible for plowing until he gets the road approved by the town.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know the mechanics of how all that happened, but, you know, obviously it
So
did happen.
your HOA pays for plowing and landscaping, mowing and everything?
Water
Well,
treatment.
of the common areas, yeah.
Water separate.
Huh?
What is this?
Water separate, that's a separate bill. But just to your point.
We have wells.
Irrigation wells, not the drinking water, and the water supply
Drinking water
house
is
is
its own
a private company owned by Andy. So that's a separate discussion, but
Oh,
I'm quite
okay.
certain we don't have the leverage to take over the HOA. He admitted that if he sells his lots down below, that would trigger the event. Until that time, I don't think we get any,
We should
we
compare
don't
our
hit it.
documents.
I've read it a bunch of times, I
I
don't,
have, but I don't know if we have the same copy, because
yeah, they're all,
If it's 50% of the lots,
it's 75%.
75%.
well,
It needs to be
But
53
sold, but
houses,
not
we're at
occupied.
40 something, I think it's occupancy, and it doesn't include the lots that are used for, that are being used for finance, like the people who bought it just for investment, those lots don't count. Andy's lots don't count, so there's a percentage that we don't get to unless they either build it out or Andy sells.
Okay, so
So-
we're running out of our allotted time for this. Are there any last comments?
Help.
How-
Just for a plan of action moving forward, you know, if we ask them to adjust the plan, well, I guess we should ask the fire department if we even need a turnaround at the end of Mill Pond.
Yeah, we can coordinate with fire department.
Yeah.
What I would suggest is getting somewhat of a construction schedule from Fred and Andy, and then set up some deadlines where we say, okay, if you don't meet this, whatever it is, by this date, we're gonna pull the bond. Let's
Yeah.
start giving him real
Yeah,
deadlines.
so find out if we need the circle or not. If we do need the circle, then we'll have to have some type of
Yeah.
agreement with the landowners, and then, and then
have we figured out if the work to be done, what the estimated cost is?
We would have to go back.
Because
Yeah.
I know, what I'm suggesting is, do we have any avenues to either put a lien on phase one, or take phase one, or a portion of phase one?
I think without speculating in a public meeting, those are the types of conversations that should be had with council.
Right, yeah, right.
And I will authorize whatever
Okay.
we need to do with council.
I think we should have,
to get it.
yeah, I think we should have town council weigh in on that.
You've got my full approval to do whatever we got to do with council.
All right, thank you.
And we're just saying, we have 250,000 bonded, which has some buffer built in, but, the things that need to be done are also things that money was given but need to be redone, like some of the berms that were trampled and binder that needs to be replaced, so. I think what our factor is 1.5, so, right, so whatever that works out to be. The bonded work is 175,000 and we have full 250, whatever the amount
It's
is.
really for inflation, the
Yeah.
workup, so.
Yeah, so it's probably actually, who knows, it's
Yeah.
gonna be close.
They bid it out, so you should be able to, if they'll share that number, they said they had to bid it and.
They did have to bid it out,
So you
yeah.
can get an estimate.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Keep working on
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
So Don, did you have anything else for your town administrator?
No, just a public service announcement, and I'll be quick, I know Mr. Choder's on the phone. But just, it's the time of year to talk about the Town of Bolton Senior Fuel Assistance Program. Low-income Bolton seniors were warmer last winter because of the help they received from the Town of Bolton Senior Fuel Assistance Program. Seniors who are 60 years and older and meet a financial criteria get approved to receive 100 free gallons of heating oil. This vital energy assistance program has meant so much to Bolton seniors, and we need donations to keep it operating. Let's not leave anyone out in the cold. Please donate today and warm the hearts and homes of Bolton seniors in need. Please send donations to Ninotchka Rogers, Accountant Town Hall, 663 Main Street, Bolton, Mass. 01740. Check should be payable to the Town of Bolton. If you have any questions regarding the program, please contact Lisa Dion, Outreach Coordinator at the Bolton Council on Aging, at 978-779-3314, or the email is outreach@townofbolton.com. Thank you.
So now we're moving on to Board of Selectmen business. Do we have any public service announcements tonight?
Just I'd like to let people know that the full schedule of all the town budgeting, an election, and caucus, all of that is on a single document located in the Selectmen's portion of the town website. So anybody who's needs to set their calendars and arrange for babysitters, now you know when you need them for.
Well said.
So we have a proposal related to senior recognition award.
Yes. As we all know, back in the late 1880s, a newspaper called the Boston Post sent out canes with brass tops and tips to every town in New England. And these canes were sent out to all the towns with the instructions that they were to be awarded to the oldest citizen in town. Many towns in New England still have their original cane and continue to award it to the oldest citizen in town as necessity creates the need to do that. We lost track of our cane, I don't know, 7 to 10 years ago.
It was here when I came here almost 10 years ago. I have nothing to do with its disappearance, but I do know that we did have it that recently.
So I did some investigating. I found out that the town of Peterborough, New Hampshire, for some reason decided that they were going to become Boston Post Cane Central. And they went out and they had a whole bunch of these, and towns like Bolton have been buying these duplicates from Peterborough, New Hampshire now for many years. Here's a couple of photos of the tops and the cane. You can see it's got a brass top. It's inscribed on the top. We would need to get the town of Bolton actually inscribed on the top of it. It also has a brass tip at the other end. And traditionally what would happen is the cane would be awarded to a citizen upon someone else's passing, and that person would be recognized. I would suggest that this time that awarding be more a ceremonial thing, that the cane actually return to town hall after the ceremony, and that we perhaps get a plaque or something to recognize the person who's it's being awarded to. I've gone over this idea with the Council on Aging, and they're supportive of it. The cost is $150 per cane, which includes shipping, and I would throw another $50 on top of it just to handle the engraving of adding the name of the town of Bolton to it. So I'm asking for an appropriation out of the Selectmen's funds of $200 to obtain a Boston Post cane. I would work with Don Lowe and the Council on Aging and what the criteria for selecting this person should be. Towns nowadays have things like oldest person in town who's lived there for 15 years or something like that. So we just need to come up with some criteria and then announce what the eligibility criteria are. So I would like to move the Selectmen appropriate $200 to obtain a cane and have it engraved.
So moved.
1 second, Nan, do you have a question?
Did you say a plaque also? Wouldn't you need money for a plaque?
Yeah, we could appropriate it tonight, or we could appropriate it after we, got eligibility and all that stuff. I think that would be another $50 or so.
I think you should appropriate it now, my opinion, as a resident, not as a reporter.
So do 250.
Do
Okay,
250. I will amend it to 250.
So moved. Again?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Thank you.
Thank you.
Vote to adopt the 2018 Bolton, Massachusetts Hazard Mitigation Plan.
It's already been, Leslie had to duck out, I think. It's already been reviewed by the selectmen. It really, this is in our final stages now to get this done. I think it's more of a formality than anything right now.
So the suggestions for improvement, are there anything interesting in there, or it was?
We haven't, I don't believe we've changed anything as far as the suggestions for improvement. We have not received anything else. It's been reviewed by NEMA, and
We had a presentation on it.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right, so I move to vote to adopt the 2018 Bolton, Massachusetts Hazard Mitigation Plan.
You would actually vote the certificate of adoption.
Okay?
I'll second his okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
And we have a copy of it.
Yeah,
that
here's
the
a copy for
selectmen
each one of you to sign.
will sign.
And we have a request to release funds, $27,594.53 for the Bolton Access TV operations.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Set Selectmen's meeting schedule for January through May.
You all have a calendar in your packet, knowing that you would want to get through this with as much alacrity as possible. Linda and I reviewed the calendar, and trying to avoid February and April school vacations, we've come up with the suggestions of January 10th and 24th, February 7th and 28th, March 7th and 21st, April 4th and 25th, and one in May, May 9th, which would be after annual town meeting but before the election. Those dates would tie to what we've already published on the budget calendar.
Yes. Okay.
As far as milestones for the selectmen.
All right, I move we accept those dates.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Running through. Approved bill payroll warrants W19-10 and W19-10A.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those are signed. Any minutes? Okay.
I know I'm caught up.
Uh-oh.
I have to check my email, because I haven't done it since this morning. Somebody forwarded a bunch of stuff.
So we're moving on to candidates for fire chief interviews. We have 3 candidates, and we will start with Mr. William Choate.
George, come in. It's nice to see you. Come on in.
Hello, sir.
All right, good to see you again. Pleasure.
Nice to
Hi,
meet
good evening.
Hi, nice to see you.
you. Welcome.
Thank you.
So the selectmen have some prepared questions for you. Assuming you'd probably like to make an opening statement before they start. We have 20 minutes budgeted for each interview, and I will prompt the board and the candidate when we've got 5 minutes left, if we're still going at that point. So I just would invite you to make any opening comments that you'd like to make.
Just a little bit about myself and my education. I have a diverse set of skills and knowledge, skills, and abilities that directly relate to the position at hand and what was advertised in the job description. I'd like to keep leadership, managerial, and organizational and planning skills at the forefront. Kind of helps me understand what the objective of the job is. I also like to keep imagination, innovation, and really sound judgment at the forefront. That also helps me understand the job as well at hand, as far as the fiduciary responsibilities and the development and planning. I have 25 years in the emergency services. I've been a paramedic, a business owner, a lieutenant, a command position, and I got a degree in business. I think the fire department really needs to have some type of business background in it. That helps with a lot of the daily running of it. So really, it's I try and keep my education up in the fire academies at the.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll get started with the questions. Don, are you asking questions?
No, I thought that it would be the selectmen.
Great. Stan, do you want to start?
Well, actually, since, as everyone knows, I was on the screening committee that whittled the number of candidates down to the 3 that we have tonight. So during that screening process, we asked a number of questions. I'm perfectly fine with the session that we had with Mr. Choate back a number of weeks ago. So I'm all fine. So I will release some of my time to allow you gentlemen.
Let me ask you this: would you tell us what you thought the most, not necessarily what the question you asked, but what was the most interesting question asked of anybody during during the search? Because I think that would be something that would help us, give us some perspective. What's
Well, they were all very interesting questions.
okay? I thought maybe there was one that stood out.
No, I mean, there were a variety of questions in different areas. I think it was, some of the questions, were designed to challenge the applicant in sort of a what-if kind of situation. And I know there were questions asked about looking at short, medium, and long-range terms. There was a question about potentially combining fire and EMS under one roof. It's not necessarily done that way at the present time. So I mean, I think all of the questions had their sort of unique spin. I don't know, Don, did you share any of those questions?
I did not share the questions with the board, but to answer the question that Bob asked you, I always find it to be extremely interesting to learn why somebody would like to leave the situation they're in now to come work for us. What is it desirable about coming here to the applicant? And what is motivating them to make whatever move they would take from whatever situation they're in now to coming here? I always find that very interesting.
Would you be willing to make that your question tonight?
Sure. I'd be happy to. So I'll lead off, William. So, considering what you're doing now and looking at the potential opportunity here in Bolton, what is motivating you to want to come to Bolton to be, the fire chief? From your perspective, is it the opportunity? Is it the town? Is it the challenge? Feel free to.
Yeah. 25 years ago when I got into the field, I kind of had a goal set out, a long-term goal to actually make it to this point. Worked very hard to get here. Kind of took all the steps, went through a lot of mentoring with different towns, different fire chiefs to understand the role. I've always progressed in whatever I've done. I've spent a lot of time in school at the fire academy, like I said, to gain the knowledge and the wisdom, and now I want to pass it on. So, it's the town as well. The town's a beautiful town. It's something that a call department, the town supports a call department because it wants to keep the taxes low. There's a certain commitment that the members of the department have, and that's really intriguing to me because, anybody can be a call, anybody can be a full-time firefighter, and it's a 9 to 5 job, you get your paycheck, but the call department, these guys are dedicated, these guys and ladies are dedicated, and they want to come back. It's something that they want to do, and that's what intrigues me about it.
Mr. Cho, can you identify a unique characteristic of yourself and how that would benefit, how you would use that to benefit Bolton?
Well, my characteristics is I try and keep my loyalty, my integrity, and my ethics out front, and being honest and transparent. Because without loyalty, and nobody can count on you, and without integrity, nobody can, trust that you're going to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. Without ethics, nobody can trust that you make the right decision. So I think having that type of upfront transparency would be something that would be beneficial to the town.
Thank you.
Sure. How has firefighting changed since you first entered the profession, and how do you see it changing going forward, and how do you prepare people for that?
Well, I think the biggest is technology. There's always technology. I think it's changed more than more in EMS and since when I became a paramedic. That's been light years. That's advanced. Technology really is something that it's all driven by numbers. It's all driven by data. It's all driven by experimentation and figuring out what's working and what's not working. So it's something that I think we're a lot safer. I think we're a lot better off because of that. But I think that's where the most advancements come from is technology.
And how do you bring that? How would you bring that home in this environment and prepare people to utilize that going forward?
I think it's all in training. It's all in exposing the guys and the girls to the training to understand that technology is something that's good. I mean, this generation now is a technology-driven generation, so they kind of understand the younger group.
Okay.
As a fire chief, what can you do to bring in the next generation of call firefighters, to attract them?
To attract them? Like I said, I got a degree in business because I feel that that's where we need to start looking at how to manage these fire departments. And like I said the last interview, branding the department, marketing the department is something that really needs to be really thought out. The recruitment or retention issue is something that's been happening since the 1980s. It's nothing new. So, when we understand why it's so hard, I think we're just having difficulty adapting to it. So by branding the department, making sure it's something that people want to become part of, that it's a place that they know that they can go and have friendships and things like that, and know that it's professional, and know that they're well trained, and then getting out into the community and marketing it. As far as we always go back to say the Explorer program works, or the social media or something like that works very well. I think we need to break it down and start going to the community and asking the community to come join us instead of us waiting for them to come to us. So I think by getting some type of marketing out there, I mean, there's plenty of other ways of recruitment. There's 7 colleges within 15 miles, so a lot of those, you can do something like tuition reimbursement or books, if they meet certain incentives, or have incentive programs, longevity programs and stuff like that. I think it just has to be more attractive. The community's here, the community wants a call department. I think those people are out there. It's just we need to go out and actually make the effort to go out and get them.
If I may, I'll go back on my earlier statement and ask a question. Thank you. Maybe you can describe to me what you believe leadership means, and how are you looking and planning to bring that to the Bolton Fire Department?
Leadership has always been, one's ability to influence on others for the better. I try and look at leadership as one's ability to recognize the strengths in the individuals and groups and using that to better the organization. I try and use like a situational type of leadership where you're either directing, coaching, supporting, or delegating individuals. So everybody doesn't learn at the same pace. Everybody doesn't have the same knowledge base. Having one authoritarian type of leadership is kind of tough because it's not been responded to in the same fashion it did in the past. So if you're looking at a group of individuals or the stages of the command structure, you know, someone that's in a deputy's chief's position or a captain's position, they don't need the same leadership. It's something that could be more delegated. But you know, then you have the junior guys in the department that don't quite understand how everything works and the flow of things. So they're going to need something that's more supervised or dictated to. So I try and figure out the strengths of everybody and go from there. You know?
Okay. You've seen combined fire departments and EMTs, and you've probably seen separate organizations. What do you think are the relative strengths of the two setups, where EMTs are part of the fire department and where they're a separate organization?
I started off in the call department. The department I'm in now didn't just had EMTs. It was just, you know, and then I worked up into the regular department. Which I already had my paramedic when we joined them. We had just joined the ALS program. We had just started open up. Excuse me. And I was appointed the ALS coordinator. So I have an understanding that, you know, the two departments, as far as a fire department and a ambulance department, can work together very well. We had some difficulties combining them at first, but it worked out. I spent 10 years as the ALS coordinator, and it's something that I understand. I understand the local and state relationships that need to be built, and you know, something that I think combining departments is something that's good. It's a good revenue builder. Like I said, the last interview, one of the issues we were having is, you know, we were starting to fall with our revenue base because of a couple of programs that were going on. But I used this service zone plan that I wrote to go to the Life Care Center, which is it's a nursing facility, and they have a lot of trucks going in, but they have a private ambulance company that was in there. So I started taking out, so it came to agreement, so I started taking out non-medical necessity patients and bringing them to the ER, and it increased our revenue by about $200,000 in 1 year. You know, and that in some billing practices, it was a little over $200,000. So it works out well sometimes to have that ambulance integrated, and it kind of offsets a lot of the costs in the department.
Mr. Chairman, we're at 5 minutes left.
5 minutes left. Okay, my last question. Can you tell me what grant opportunities there are for call fire departments like ours, and what experience you have writing and winning grants?
I don't have any experience writing grants. I've been to all the classes for it. On our department, we have 2 individuals that have written all our grants and have been very successful in it. It's something that I look forward to. I have a very good writing style. You know, it all comes down to, I think, just getting the numbers right to present and having the right narrative to try and, you know, push that grant through. There's a plethora of, you know, the AFGs and the grants and everything like that. I mean, there's outside grants as well that, you know, through private companies and stuff.
I'm all set.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Maybe allow Mr. Chair if he wants to close the statement. Or
Yes.
Well, you know, I just got a little nervous, you know, so just my opening statement was kind of rocky, kind of lost track, but something that I'm very passionate about. You know, it's a community that is really great. I understand why there's a call department here, and I understand that, you know, it's something that the town wants to maintain. I mean, it's in your planning, your 20-year planning vision statement that, you know, they want to moderate taxes and make sure that service is still covered and you know, keep the town small. So something I think I'd be a good fit for.
Okay.
Thank you for.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Good seeing you again. Pleasure.
Good to see you again. You just think about that way or this way? Oh, okay. I believe it. It's up to you, totally up to you. Okay. Snow started, why does the weather have to be right when
There is snow on the ground.
Bring it on.
This is Mr. Kelly.
Well,
Tim, good to see you again.
Jonathan Keith. nice
Tim
to
Kelly.
meet you.
Hi, Bob Skansky. Nice to meet you.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome, Mr. Kelly. Would you like to make an opening statement?
Just I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to apply for the job of fire chief here in the town of Bolton. I've appreciated working in the town of Bolton for the last, I think, 14 or 15 years as your EMT year one instructor over at the high school. So I've had a pretty good relationship with members of the ambulance squad, members of the fire department, and I've had the opportunity to enjoy the people of this town for a long time, and I'm looking forward for the opportunity to speak toward being the fire chief for this town.
The interview's 20 minutes long, Tim, as we did with the first round, and I'll prompt you when there's 5 minutes left.
Thank you.
Well, I know, obviously, Tim, you have a long history and association with the town of Bolton, and certainly, thank you for that. But obviously, when we chatted back during the screening committee, and obviously from your CV, you're involved in a lot of different things. So, other than knowing Bolton, what makes wanting to be chief, something that you're looking to do, and obviously, you're going to most likely have to give up some of the other things that you're doing.
Absolutely.
To do that. So maybe you can, why Bolton and why the chief's position?
I've enjoyed the opportunity as a chief officer in a career department and in a part-time call department. Bolton is similar to my hometown in its makeup and the way the service is run. So it's kind of like hometown, very similarities. I see a lot of opportunities for leadership and growth in Bolton, and I would think that I have some things to offer to this town as far as what I've learned in either the career side or in the call side of my career history, working with call firefighters and call EMTs and working with career firefighters as well. I've had a lot of opportunities throughout my career to do different things, manage budgets, manage folks, come up with new ideas and good ideas to encourage and participation in the manpower. So I would hope that I could bring some of those ideas here to Bolton and apply them to the Bolton Fire Department. And I just really like the folks here. I find it's very similar to my hometown, that good, high-quality feel of a lot of committed, good people.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly, can you talk about your leadership style?
I believe strongly that when you're leading a department like this one, you really have to have a cooperation of your manpower. In other words, you really need to encourage the folks from the guys on the floor through your officers' corps that they really need to feel empowered to come forward with ideas and to work cooperatively as a group toward a common goal. I found with the call departments, if you come in and just top down, we're going to do it my way, it doesn't work very well. You really have to work with your folks, get buy-in from your folks, and then you can make good, positive changes to improve the department. I believe that not only does it take the opportunity to get input from your folks, but you've got to know your folks. You've got to know who they are, what their lives are like, be able to understand some of the things that face them. For instance, in a call department, if you've got guys that have young families or travel a lot, you may have to look at how they respond or their lack of response based on their lives. If you don't know your folks, and you don't know what's facing them and how they're managing their stuff, you really can't help guide them and make them feel part of the flock. It really has to be a cooperative effort. So your leadership has to be cooperative and communicative. If you do not communicate with your folks, if you don't communicate with your manpower, explain to them where you're going, why you're going, and how you hope to get there, you're not going to get the buy-in and the participation. When you get the buy-in and the participation and your team comes together toward a common goal, you can take them very, very far. But they usually do not do well with, well, this is what I think we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. You really need to have that discussion, and we need to have some buy-in. And I would say my leadership is one of inclusion. I would say my leadership is one of communication, letting everybody know what's going on, why it's going on, and where we're going, and then asking them to join in a common plan to get to a common end goal.
Thank you.
Could you tell us how firefighting has changed since you first started doing it, how it's changing today, and how you would prepare a call firefighter unit for tomorrow?
Well, absolutely. Tactics and strategy have changed 180 degrees over the last few years. I remember as a young firefighter getting on the truck, putting your air pack on, putting your mask on, would get all fogged up and you'd fall out of the truck because you couldn't see. And today we're putting our masks on as we get ready to go through the front door. Just simple changes like that. Strategy and tactics, where we start fighting the fire from the outside of the building, cool the fire down, and then go in and finish it off. Even different tactics and strategy we use for rescuing victims. Instead of going in and holding on to the boot of the guy in front of you and just dragging 6 guys up a hallway, we're using ropes, we're using thermal imaging cameras, we're using all kinds of new technology to be able to effectively and quickly go through a building and do a search. There's a lot of new changes in the fire service. The easiest way to keep folks up is to just keep training. What I found is that a lot of the experts in the fire service say if you're not reading an article every day, if you're not watching a web show every day on stuff in the fire service, you're never going to learn. And then what you have to do is bring your folks in and train with them. Show them these new things. When you find something really good, bring the group in. Hey, I saw this yesterday. Let's try this. Let's go out the drill yard and let's try it. Stay up on things. Stay up on what's going into the fire service and educate your folks and train your folks so when that call comes in, they're better prepared to respond using some of the most available tactics and strategy. So you really have to stay on top of it. And encouraging the folks to get educated. Making the opportunities for folks to go to the fire academy, take the training, some of the new technology and some of the new strategy and tactics. Try and incorporate into that all of your folks so they're better prepared for whatever comes their way.
Can you describe a unique characteristic that you possess and how you would put that to work for Bolton?
Most of my experience has allowed me to develop a reputation as a trainer. So whether it's 5 minutes in the firehouse in the morning, we come across something, I'm always trying to teach throughout the day. That's probably one of my strongest assets, is to be able to bring that trainer mentality. And I think wherever we are, working in the firehouse, working on the fire ground, working on calls, being able to accomplish the tasks, but able to teach guys at the same time, helps us to be a better unit, better prepared for the next event. So one of the assets that I think I have is that strength as a trainer to take every single call as a training opportunity and help to better prepare the folks for the next call that comes in.
Thank you.
I'm okay right now.
Okay. Can you talk about think it was in your resume. Can you talk about what grants are out there, you know, specifically, what organizations, and then what your success in applying for and winning some of them?
There are a number of grants out there right now for fire service. Through MEMA, the HEMP grant, which is your hazard emergency management planning grants, so you can mitigate hazards in the community that you might see. I know one of there's a couple of towns working on one for emergency generators right now. I don't know if Bolton's involved in that, but that's one of the preparedness grants. The EMPG, Emergency Management Planning Grant. We've successfully written grants for propane fire generators, emergency generators for radios. We've written grants for ballistic protective equipment for responders. We've written grants for camera systems and security systems. We've written grants for HVAC for the public safety building to try and maintain the temperature in the radio rooms and the server rooms. So there's those grants through MEMA are available. The best one available is the Fire Act grant, or the Assistance to Firefighters grant. I've successfully been involved with two of them. One that I wrote the grant with the help of a couple of colleagues for a complete overhaul of our SCBA's and for an overhaul of our compressor system, and replaced all of our SCBA's, all our bottles, all our masks, RIP packs, escape packs, and a brand new compressor system for the fire station. That was a $232,000 grant. There's also a SAFER grant that I have never been involved in, but it's out there for staffing. For a call department, it can be used for recruitment and retentions. If you wanted to recruit new members, train new members, and retain them, you can apply for that grant. There's also a safety and education grant through FEMA, excuse me, that you can apply for training purposes. Some of the folks have been able to do that is smoke detector replacement in senior citizen housing, even some replacing the electric filaments and electric stoves so they don't get that hot where they don't create fire hazards. So those are some of the grants that are out there, and there are a few more, I'm sure. I worked on the AirPack grant for Princeton, and that was successful. I've worked on a couple of grants at Devon's as just a member of the team, where we did a complete replacement of all our turnout gear at SCBA there as well. So I've been through I've applied for, I think, 6 or 7 Assistance to Firefighters grants. They're very, very competitive. One checkbox off, one misspoken word, and the whole grant doesn't go anywhere. So it's kind of difficult to get through the process, but I was successful with the team at Devon's one time, and I was successful in Princeton 2 years ago. And the 2016 grant replaced all our air packs and our air compressor.
Excellent. Thank you.
Could you discuss the relative merits of having separate firefighting and EMT units versus having a combined firefighter EMT unit?
Honestly, I'm a fan of a combined department. I believe that the best use of your staff is when you have combined services, fire, EMS, under the same roof, under the same leadership. We do a lot of the same things, we respond to a lot of the same calls. It just makes sense if we have folks that can do both. But one of the dynamics I've seen that works very successfully, and when we had our last interview, one of the things was discussed was, do you force firefighters to become EMTs and force EMTs to become firefighters? And I don't agree with that. I believe that when you have the services under the same roof with the same leadership, you've got that constant leadership and organization structure. But if you've got folks that just want to be EMTs, they should just be EMTs, because they'll be really good at it. And if you have folks that just want to be firefighters, you let them just be firefighters, because they'll want to be good at it. And then a few will want to do both. Those folks that do both might be able to be folks that you look for per diem or day shift positions, or positions where you're staffing them full time, because especially during the day, there's not a lot of folks around to respond to calls. So you want somebody who can get on the fire truck and go to a fire, or can get on the ambulance and go to an ambulance call. But nights, weekends, call them in a call system. I think your best bet is to allow people to do what they're comfortable with and what they enjoy. If you force folks to take on a role that they're not comfortable with, they're not going to be good at it. They're not going to be comfortable at it, and it can lead to a lot more problems. When you look at a call department like you have here in Bolton, I think your goal is to fill the ranks. And the best way to fill the ranks is encourage people the opportunity to do what they feel comfortable with and to provide them the training opportunities to get good at it.
That leads to my last question, which was, what can we do as the fire chief to, bring in the next generation of call firefighters?
When you set up a call department, you really need to focus on creating an environment where new folks can come in, look at the job, try it out, see how it fits. And then you want to encourage them to that gold standard of the training. And in Massachusetts, that's attendance to the Massachusetts Firefighting Academy. I think most of us in Central Mass have found when we take a new in, we get him the opportunity to try things out, put on the turnout gear, put on the air pack, climb a ladder, go through these things, and they decided, hey, this is something I really, really want to do. Then take them that next step and send them off to the Fire Academy. The advantage you have when you have all of your folks trained at the Fire Academy is they're all adhering to the same standard, which means when they get off the fire truck, they all get off the same way. They all put a pack on their back. They all put a tool in their hand. They walk up to the front of the building ready to go. And everybody is conforming to the same training standards. And you're going to get good firefighters. The thing is, that's a huge training commitment. So for a lot of folks, that's difficult. So what I've seen work effectively in a couple of departments is for folks who maybe can't afford the time to go to that full-time, call volunteer training course, which is between 300 and 400 hours over 4 months. You can teach them in-house, you can give them lesser roles, but to put them inside a burning building, they've got to have that same standard of training. And what you need to do with the new folks is to encourage them to come in, make the firehouse a place they want to be, have training that's exciting and enjoyable, and gives them an opportunity to really feel good about themselves and feel good about what they're doing, their service to the community. Give them the confidence to be able to do that well, and to really make the firehouse a place they want to be. And I think when you do that, you'll encourage new staff, you'll train new staff, you'll give them the opportunity to move up and to continue in the organization. And when they get good at being firefighters, then they think about being officers. And good firefighters are good officers.
We're 5 minutes.
Thank you. No more questions? If you'd like to make a closing statement?
Well, again, I just really thank you for the opportunity to come in and to apply for the position and to meet twice now here in Bolton. I do believe that the training and the education I have has given me a strong educational background for the position of fire chief. I think the experience as a chief officer in a call volunteer fire department and in a career department have allowed me to see multiple sides of this job. And I think all of that experience and training will give me an opportunity to provide good, strong leadership to the fire department here in Bolton. And I would look forward to that opportunity. And again, I thank you very much for just the opportunity to come and meet with all of you and to apply for this position. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Kelly, good to meet you.
Good seeing you.
Thank you. Thank you again, sir. Good to see you again.
Are you parked back there or up there?
Out on the front.
Joe out there? Joe gotta be out there.
You have all-wheel drive, Linda.
Yeah.
You can drop me off. Is it cold in here or?
Yeah, I'm
Just
getting cold
me.
here. No, it is. It's not on at all.
Got the radio on, it shuts off, so no.
I don't even know if that one works, Dave.
It doesn't come on until July.
Yeah, it doesn't come on till July.
No, they're all pennies. None of them are connected.
They're just there.
Stapled to the wall.
It's just like that TV, it
Oh,
doesn't
that's
do
right.
anything, we just like to have Don turn it on and off.
Well,
Good evening.
Jeffrey, good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Pleasure.
Hi, good evening, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
So how's the weather out there?
A little slippery coming up the hill, a little after 8.
Going down the hill, going down the hill will be easy. Stopping will be a challenge.
It's a lot more fun, yeah.
Mr. Legendre, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, sir. So I just want to say, it has been a pleasure actually serving with the multiple boards as your interim chief since July. It's given me some opportunity to meet with the staff, which is very motivated, and been a pleasure to be a part of it for the past 4 or 5 months.
So just so you know, the interview will run 20 minutes, just as it did in the last round. And at 5 minutes, I'll prompt the board and you that there's 5 minutes left in the interview.
Very good, thank you.
Well, we had an opportunity to talk a few weeks ago during the screening, so I'm gonna let these gentlemen do most of the question asking, but obviously you've been a part of the Bolton Fire Department now for the last 4 or 5 months or so. And I've heard good things, but yeah, obviously, you know, maybe you can illuminate for all of us again. I think this is one of the questions we asked back during the screening committee. You know, why Bolton? You know, what's the motivation and interest in now that you've had an opportunity to experience it? You know, why Bolton? Why Bolton? 4 months. Well, you showed up, so that's good.
I keep coming back every week. So.
You know, and obviously, you know, you're probably gonna have to curtail some of, I mean, you're involved in a lot of stuff and, you know, curtail some of the other activities. So maybe, you know, why Bolton?
Okay. So initially what drove me to put in for even the interim spot was I was interested in a call department, call combination department. It's kind of my background, as I said in our past meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It's been further solidified with my time over in the fire department to really gauge the caliber of interest that still remains, especially in a call department. It is refreshing to see such motivation. You know, training every week, everybody's showing up, the numbers are up. After coming, you know, dealing with work and family and the motivation is there, solidifies more of my decision to then again apply for the full-time position here. Because I like that motivation and dedication. Something that I continue to strive for every day, to learn something new, to keep moving forward in my career. So I admire that aspect of dedication to the service of the town. And that's why, again, I chose to put in for the full-time, because I really liked what I saw.
Great. Can you describe a unique characteristic and how you have or would put it, actually how you would put it into service as the fire chief?
I guess my ability to bring things to the most common denominator. Common sense, firefighting is something we were just talking about. I think I have a way of conveying that message. Let's not overthink it. Let's think what the problem is, move beyond it, figure out a solution if we need to. And I think I have a way of conveying that to the people I work with, that multiple people would understand.
Okay. Could you describe for us the changes in firefighting that have occurred since you first became active in it and today? And what changes are going through firefighting now, and how you would prepare a call firefighting department for these continuing changes?
It's actually quite funny that a lot of the items that are coined new or cutting edge are some things that have been around the fire service for generations and generations. Attacking a fire from the outside, knocking it down, is a tactic that's being taught right now at the Fire Academy. We've involved science a little bit more through agencies such as the NIST, National Institute of Safety and Technology, through research to show that we weren't really changing dynamics of fire. At the collegiate level, where I still teach, we're using computer modeling on fires, where we can inject data from devastating fires of the past and learn basically on computer what things we could change. As far as keeping the firefighters up to date, we need to keep that information coming into the firehouse, reviewing our tactics. The latest and greatest is not always the best thing. We need to have sound, safe strategies when we conduct our operations. I think constant evaluation of the service, not just in Bolton, as a fire service, needs to keep happening, and that's how we keep people motivated and safe and keep operations going.
Question about leadership. Obviously, you're applying to be chief, but maybe you can describe for us, what does leadership mean to you, and how are you planning to try to provide that, and your methodologies of providing leadership to the fire department in Bolton?
Leadership is by example. I need to display, and I think I have, what my expectations are to the firefighters underneath me. Having lead by example, showing them there's nothing that I haven't done or won't do. Not being a boss, but being a leader, I guess, is going back to it. Keeping up with the periodicals, with technology. It's not just my job to sit in the office as an administrator. I need to be involved in every operation of the fire department. That's meaning getting on the truck because we're down to 2 people during the day. That's what's going to happen because operations need to keep moving forward. And I think that's how I lead, would lead in this department, showing that I'm going to be involved in every facet.
In your resume, you spoke about grant writing, and so I'm just wondering what are the grant opportunities for the Bolton Fire Department, and what's been your successes in writing grants previously?
So just from July to now, we did file and were granted a grant through the DCR for the forestry. We're awaiting the award, and we know we received it. With the official word on that. Secondly, during my tenure here, we did apply for the AFG, Assistance to Firefighter Grant, where I put in for 21 sets of new turnout gear for each member of the fire department. We have an incident, go out, each firefighter has 1 set of gear. We now have to decontaminate that gear with the cancer scares that are going on, the cancer research that's going on within the fire service and the contaminants in our gear. So that puts the town at risk by having any number of firefighters down for a period of up to maybe 5 or 6 hours by the time we get cleaned and back in service. In the past, I've written for piece of fire apparatus. They do equate it to winning the Super Bowl if you get a piece of fire apparatus. So unfortunately, we were unsuccessful for 2 years in doing that, and that was with the town of West Boylston. So that's pretty much what I've done for substantial grant writing and planning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you discuss the relative merits of having a separate EMT and fire units versus having a combined EMT and fire units? And I'm not asking it to be specific to Bolton.
Okay. just generally. Is there an advantage to having separate ambulance and fire?
Well, the relative merits of.
Okay,
of-
merits?
The merits of having them separate versus the merits of having them
Okay.
combined.
Merits of having them separate, if we have a fire incident, and I've experienced this, if you're a firefighter and an EMT paramedic, and the fire comes in, you want to be on the fire truck, you don't want to be on the ambulance. So having it separate, have a separate staff that is only pretty much dedicated to the ambulance, if that is indeed the makeup, where you have just EMTs and not crossover firefighter EMTs. The merits of being together, we have a greater opportunity for grants, for funding, for combined training, more cohesive organization under one roof.
So just to follow up on that, you referenced grants, so the state and the federal government would like fire and EMT to be working more closely together through the grants, is that what?
Correct, because right now, there's nothing stopping, nor should it, two organizations applying for granting. And when those two are combined as one, could be seen as a bigger conglomerate that it's going to benefit, instead of two separate departments.
Okay. I just have a last question for myself. What can you do as the chief in terms of recruiting the next generation of call firefighters in Bolton?
So, what we'd like to get an explorer post. I mean, we have the cadets that are currently working. That is a pool that we could draw from, who did work with the scouts and did a explorer post. I do have some history in that with Northborough that started an explorer post in 1971 and continued for many years. Also, getting involved in being out in the public, with Touch a Truck. We've been, just this fall, we did the seniors inaugural walk. The library, we were down there for Safety Day. Getting out in the public and being involved is going to draw attention.
When you say seniors, you mean at the high school?
Nope, senior center.
Okay.
Yes, and you'll have to forgive me, I forget the actual title, memory walk. That was.
Oh, so you're part of a memory walk fundraiser?
That held at Neshoba.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and excuse me if I forgot the.
Well, you said senior at the school.
I know, not the seniors in 12th grade, the senior side.
Okay.
So I think by doing that, and that was an all-family event down there, so we were hitting multi-generational. Actually, a couple of the firefighters that had been on a year or two said that it was an interaction at the school that got them excited and wanted to join the fire department. So those are avenues that we're recruiting. Without recruiting, obviously we would use other mediums and being involved, but I think that's been the most successful thus far.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I'm good.
Would you like to make a closing statement?
Just to close the statement, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity that you've given me thus far. It was what I expected, and sometimes more than I expected, but we made it through, and it's really, truly has been a pleasure for the past 12 months to work with the staff at the fire, EMS, and the multiple other departments that I've worked with, building projects and around town. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess it would be the next step would be for the board to deliberate and see if you're prepared to.
Okay,
make a
I've just
decision.
got to ask, did the other two candidates leave?
Yes, to do.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
They were concerned about the roads.
Yeah, no, that's fine, it's just.
It's coming down.
Not Bolton's roads,
if-
the other
if-
roads.
If Jeff is staying, I just wanted to make sure the other people were in the room also if they were
No,
in
absolutely.
the vicinity. Okay.
I'll take a stab at it. I had the pleasure of meeting all of the potential candidates back when we did the screening, we whittled the list down to the three, Mr. Choate, Mr. Kelly, and Mr. Legendre. I think all three gentlemen are fine gentlemen, and I think could do a good job, but I think based upon the conversations we had, obviously our interviewing was a little more detailed during the screening process, and to try to frame it in a positive way, I think Mr. Legendre presented himself, in my view, the best, and certainly I believe he received, I believe, the most votes amongst the screening committee when we went through. I think he certainly has proved himself as acting chief the last 3, 4, 5 months. I've heard very good things from Don in the department concerning Mr. Legendre's tenure at the department. I believe we have in our packets a letter that was signed by 14.
I believe it was 14.
14 of the firefighters at the department, lending their support to Jeff becoming a full-time chief. So I think, based upon my initial interviewing of the three candidates back during the screening committee, and obviously tonight, I allowed you guys to ask most of the questions since I was pretty much satisfied the last time around. I believe, in my opinion, Mr. Legendre is the best candidate to move forward as full-time fire chief for the town of Bolton.
Thank you for that, Stan. I think we had two good candidates tonight in terms of, answers to questions, and we were certainly one of them. I think I support Stan's recommendation.
I would just like to say thank you to the search committee for doing a good job and for vetting the candidates and sending good candidates forward. I think they were all excellent. One of the things that impresses me about Mr. Legendre is his ability to go back and forth. He's cognizant in the big picture, but he's got the details down too. And I think that's been a distinguishing characteristic for him. I have had people contact me in support of Mr. Legendre's candidacy, and I believe that would be the right direction for the town to take.
And I guess, unless there are any other questions, I'll make the motion that the Board of Selectmen appoint Jeffrey Legendre as the full-time fire chief for the town of Bolton.
I'll second that.
If I may, believe me, I'm not speaking against it. I totally support Jeff for the position. But just to, a couple of caveats. One, reference checks, as a formality, but we would want to go through reference checks. Not ready to build a statue of you just yet.
A snowman, perhaps.
Also, and I know this has already been done, but as a formality, we would redo a Cory check. And also successful completion of contract negotiations, which I would ask that the board authorize me to do the contract negotiations as I would with with anyone else. I know what parameters we're working under and so forth, so.
Then I'll amend my motion to include everything you've just said.
And I'll second the amended motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Right on time, too. Nice work. That's what's really important here.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It's a big deal. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I think the board's made an excellent decision. I've gained a lot of, not gained, I've gotten a lot of respect for Jeff in the short time that we've worked together. Yeah, I think he's gonna do a great job for us.
So, I think that's it. Do we have a motion to adjourn, or is there a second page?
No, let's hope not.
No,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.